Good evening, welcome to the Clifton Park Town Board meeting of October 19th. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask our friends from the Elks to lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Teresa, roll call.
Councilman Wales? Here. Councilwoman Sanders? Here. Councilman Morelli?
Here.
Councilwoman Fuller? Here. Supervisor Barrett?
Here, entertain a motion to approve town board meeting minutes of October 5th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Wallowitz, seconded by Mr. Whalen.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sanders?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz? Yes. Supervisor Barrett?
Yes, and we have something you want to read, Teresa?
I do. It was advertised in the 14th day of October that the town board meeting's change of address, Town of Clifton Park, County of Saratoga, State of New York, due to potential public participation at public presentations being held on October 19th and November 2nd, 2020. More space is required for social distancing guidelines due to state requirements. Clifton Park Town Board meeting scheduled for Monday, October 19th and November 2nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. will take place in the Clifton Park Senior Community Center, 6 Clifton Common, Town of Clifton Park.
Very good, thank you very much. And this room does afford us a little more opportunity to social distance while still being able to invite a larger number of folks to a meeting. And tonight is certainly an occasion for that, as we're going to hear from a couple of young folks in our community that are doing some great things. And some middle-aged folks as well, John Shearer, Bill Tierney, Fred Masterson. Right? So we have a busy evening, but first communications and announcements. I just have one quick thing. Just a reminder again, tomorrow at 11 a.m., I'm hosting a public Zoom meeting. We're going to talk about the town seal and some proposed updates to the seal. It won't be long, and we'll be celebrating a 200th anniversary of the town of Clifton Park. So it's good timing to consider some updates, some minor alterations to the seal that has served the town very well since 1981. It's the same gentleman that created the first seal, as the person that we've been working with. We'll have some graphics to show you tomorrow on Zoom, so please join us. Again, that's a public meeting. Any other communications and announcements at this time? Okay, well, let's get right to business. Elizabeth Andrus, young lady, is completing her Girl Scout Silver Award project. Yes. Does that mean I have to move?
I think you're okay.
It's okay, you can tell me I have to. Elizabeth is, and I know she had some help from the troop. Her family supports her 110%. They also expended a great deal of time in working on improvements at the Milius Cemetery. Now, you've driven by the cemetery, I'm sure, 8,000 times. May not know exactly what the name of the cemetery is, but it is the Milius Cemetery right there on Clifton Park Center Road. I guess the best way to identify it is that one large stone that's right on the edge of the elevated area next to the road. So that is hard to miss. Cemetery's been there for a long time. We're gonna have Elizabeth tell us about her project, about the cemetery, and the incredible amount of work that she invested in making this project happen. So Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lizzie Andrus. I'm a 9th grader at Shenandoah High School West and a senior in Girl Scouts. So before we start, I'd like to explain what a Silver Award is. It is a 50-hour project when you are a cadet in Girl Scouts, which is grades 6 through 8. And because of COVID, I had an extended deadline and I'm allowed to finish it in the beginning of my 9th grade year. The minimum, I don't know what the.
There we go. Give your dad the high sign. That's better.
The minimum hours requirement is 50 hours, and it is a girl-led project with an advisor that cannot be your mother or any leaders of your Girl Scout troop. To start off, the main focus was to find a problem in your community that you wanted to fix and sustain. And so I had noticed that on many errands throughout many weekends, I would be driving by a cemetery, and at the time, it was very overgrown. The grass was over 2 feet tall, and when we looked more into it, lots of stones had fallen down, but obviously they weren't noticeable because of overgrown footprints. So to look more into it, I went to a town board meeting just like this in August of 2019 and talked to Councilman James Whalen about what part of the town I should deal with to help fund and work with on the project. And then I was directed to Gail Winters, who is by the wall, but she wants to leave. So I was directed to work with her, and I went to a historical preservation committee meeting, and we met up and developed a plan on what we chose to work on with the cemetery. The first part that we did was D2, and D2 is a water-soluble chemical that takes away biological components like dirt and moss and other things that are underground. I was donated about 2 of those size bottles. We ended up not needing them all because there was so much, and we put them in the smaller spray bottles. So these are pictures from August 2019, before any work was done, when Gail and I went over to plan out what we'd like to fix. So as you can see, stones are leaning on each other, and it had not been mowed in a while. So after the August meeting and with the Historical Preservation Committee meeting, I had been in contact with the Highway Department, and they started mowing it on a semi-regular basis, which was great because they noted so it would be down to the dirt, which was good because it would take a while for the grass to grow back, so it wouldn't have to be kept that much. So this picture is from July 2020, after we raked it, but just as a comparison. That's what it looks like overgrown, and that was after mowing and about a day later. So as a part of the Silver Work project, funds are needed, and as a Girl Scout, it is important to develop leadership skills. So I had to raise money for my idea, and our plan was to hire Joe Ferranini, who was a good friend of Gail's family, and he did a lot of cemetery work, and so he was very well known and good grades and was very good with trades. So as a part of this project, I hosted a badge event at the Locust Lane Clubhouse, and it was the My Family Story Brownie badge. And as you can see in the corner, brownies are 2nd and 3rd graders. And so badge workshops are a very good fundraising idea because you can charge about $10, and in the 1 to 2 hours that the girls are there, they'll learn the 5 steps of a badge, get the badge to be sewn onto the vest, and have a little fun. So I led this badge event with the help of my sisters and a few girls in my troop. And we did it in November of 2019 and profited around $100. These are some pictures. It was a fun thing to do because I never hosted a badge event, but it also took a little bit of time management skills because you had to keep 7 and 8 open tank in 2 hours. So the town of Clifton Park has a community action fund grant that, and the money comes from bottles and cans that are recycled at the transfer stations. And so this was also November of 2019, where I went to another town board meeting after applying for the grant and was granted $400 for the cemetery restoration. On top of this, the Historical Preservation Committee also donated money towards the restoration of Joe. So this was 3 days of raking throughout July and August of 2020. We did about 30 bags and all, about 10 bags a day to work out with our schedules. And on the right, it's a little messed up because of the board, but Gail and I were working on a plot plan, but it's not as correct. The plot plan is not as correct now because when cleaning and storing the stones, we found a lot that were under the ground that we had to. So October 3rd through 6th, 2020, Saturday to Tuesday, members of the Historical Preservation Committee, my mother and I, and Joseph Faramini came to work on the cemetery. Now, his main idea was to work on the 3 stones that are in the front of the cemetery that you see when you walk by. There are 3 big additional ones to the monument that most people notice. It's in pictures on later slides, but it's maybe just this right now. And Joe was kind enough to come on Saturday, and then because he was invested, he decided to donate a day and come back on Sunday. And then because he wanted to finish and keep working, he ended up coming 8 to 6 every day from Saturday to Tuesday. So while we were working, Gail was kind enough to bring pumpkin bread, which was really good. Joe had hand sanitizer and lots of masks, and then the boxes are work gloves, scrubbers to scrub the gravestones that wouldn't face the marble, and you just get off the dirt and the moss. And then the bottle down below is water pressure, because we rinsed the stones with water first, and then it's ready to be scrubbed. Now this was my favorite part because we have pictures from August 2019 to October 2020, and it made a difference. So this is the gravestone Sarah. So the left is before and the right is after. And although it looks the same, you can see that the left side has more orange, and the right side is just red. Okay, so the main focus of hiring Joe was because he had the equipment to lift the smaller monuments. Most of them were about 400 to 600 pounds, and with the tripod and the chains, it made it easier to lift them and place them. And so on the left side, you can see that for each stone, most stones were in the ground, and we had to dig them out. So that took about 20 minutes to an hour, depending on how big the stone was, to dig it out of the ground. Then we had to put it on 2x4s to wash and scrub it, which is picture 2. And picture 3 is the three components of one of the stones. Now the cool thing about this one is there's the rectangle figure and then the 2 squares, and the square in the front was actually underground. We didn't know it existed because in a picture in the next few slides, when we first looked at the cemetery, it was just the rectangle figure on top of a block, and the second square wasn't found. And so before we started, Joe had metal probe, and he was probing around because he knew that with older cemeteries, things fall off, and a lot of people try to help and they'll pick them up and leave them against trees, but then you don't know where they're found, and that's also on the next slide with a bunch of stones that we had to dig back into the ground because they were leaning up against the fence and trees. And then on the right side, it's also a little messy because of the slide, but I'm working with Joe and another guy who came to help. I wrote down their names, I kind of forgot all of them. But I was pulling the chain and there was rope wrapped around the stone, and we pulled it up, and then Joe had a cement mixture that he put on the side, that he put on square, and then small lead rectangles that help put pressure on the stones to keep them from falling. And so the left side is what it looked like before, and so you can see there that there's only 2 squares, and then the one next to it is the 3 squares that were actually part of the original monument. And you can also see the difference between cleaning and with the B2, the left and the right side is just for cleaning. And the second square we found about 5 feet away, about half a foot underground, that we had to dig out the ground. And then that's more pictures of the metal tripod with the ropes and the chain still. So the picture on the left was taken before the leave, so this was about September 2019 when we hadn't started, we had planned to clean, but we really hadn't done any of the project yet. And so on the left, you can see the 2 stones that looked good, but really we had to clean them, dig them out of the ground, and then one that was falling down. And the main focus for Joe was that he realized that the 3 stones were very easily able to be tipped over if you just push it in your hand, and so he saw it as a hazard, and those were his main ideas to work on Saturday. And the picture next to it is the middle stone restored, and that also has a second block that we found a few inches away. So this was day 1. The left side is before, and then the right side is the back and front after. All clean and stuff there. So this was a fun one because this took about 2.5 hours altogether just for this one. So the name of the stone was Albina. So, we love Albina because she took so much of our time. See, Albina had a bottom stone, then one on top, then the one with her engraving, and then a capstone. But there is a special screw for the capstone that was lost. Obviously, it's a screw and it's easy to be misplaced because also Albina was right by the fence. And when the fence was put up, it wasn't taken into account any headstones or graves that could be around the fence. So digging out that square took a while because it's very deep. That is another square part of Albina. And then that is lifting up the left side picture. Which is pretty cool. That's Albina put together, and the picture on the right is without the capstone. And then also a hard part of this stone was we had to dig out each piece to clean it and put it back together. But as you can see on the left picture, many of the stones were cracked, and so we had to find the right pieces because we couldn't just put blocks of, we couldn't just put the cement in between, we had to find the stones that matched up. So we have Mary Jane over here. She took it out too. So Mary Jane was a stone that we thought that most of the stones had snapped or broken off over time. And with Mary Jane, she was about a foot underground because she had fallen over in the late 1800s. She hadn't been documented on the work that the historical preservation had, because they do have some documents of what graves have been identified and that are still eligible and to be able to be read. And Mary Jane was not on the list that was copied in 1945. So it was even written down before 1945, so she's been underground for a while. Old stuff.
Always in one.
Yeah. And an interesting part about this was Mary Jane had a sister, Anne Jane, and another sibling next to her. But it was interesting when we were looking through the documents because they were not buried in death order. They were buried a plot in between. One child was buried, and they left a plot and buried the next one. And this normally would make sense because families bought plots in succession or multiple deaths. But it was interesting because two of the girls died about 2 months apart, and then they left space between, and then the third girl died 18 weeks later. So it was interesting on how they left one another. And then on the right side is more stones sticking out, and also one of those pictures is a tiny footstone. Now, not all of the monuments or the headstones had footstones, but many of them were not dug deep enough, so they would have just fallen out of the ground like erosion does, and people, as to help and to not have a trip happen, would put them along the fence or against a tree. And so that was also part of our work to match up the engravings on the stones because it had just initials. And then we had to, based on the age, we had to estimate how long their bodies would have been, and then to dig a shallow hole to put the headstone back in. But which is a lot smaller, and it only has initials. Now, as the last part, we have broken stones. Over time, erosion has lifted them up, and then, of course, because many people had enough money, and so they made big stones. Now, this one shown is Joseph Kane, and we believe he was very rich because he got a very big stone, but maybe it was a little carved because it snapped in half, and now it's in half. So, we had to dig out the bottom monument, and we realized that there was another platform on the bottom, in addition to the Joseph Kane big rectangle, and that took a while. And then Joe is shown on the bottom right. After they were cleaned on the wood, we put the solution and cement in between the cracks, and then we put small pieces of wood and then screwed them together to hold for about a day. And then came back the next day and put them in down where they were. On the right is shown with a little piece of wood and the screws. First we left for about a day and then they hardened. Now the monument, this is what most people see when they're driving by. And now it's straight and a lot cleaner. And also a landmark, if you maybe don't recognize the cemetery, it's across from the Orange Elementary entrance. The left picture in the top was taken in August 2019 before any work was done, before mowing. And then the picture in the middle that's dark, that was before it was cleaned, and that was the day before Joe worked on it. And the day after, you can see that it was lighter, and it really brought up, the teaching really brought up the marble in the bottom squares of the stone. And then this is just a montage of everybody working. We had about 12 volunteers at a time from Saturday to Tuesday. I was there on Saturday and Sunday, and then I came after school to check on the progress on Monday and Tuesday. And any stones that had ribbons on them were clean, so we could talk.
That's it?
Any questions?
All right.
The board and the public.
Quite a project, to be sure. And wonderful improvement for our town, and really appreciate all the effort of you and the volunteers and family, everybody that worked hard to make it happen. So you should be very proud of yourself, as we all are.
Does anyone have any questions?
And does anybody have any questions?
Lizzie, great job. That really was a fantastic project, and like I said earlier, I followed your progress through your mom's postings on Facebook, and really was a fantastic project. Well done. I do have a question about Albina.
Yeah.
How deep was she? How deep did you have to dig to find her?
Well, the part of the stone that she had was a rectangle, and then the style had each side of the rectangle slanted, and then the big part of the stone. So, well, it took about 2 hours, it took about an hour to dig her out over time, but I think she was overall plus 100.
Wow, that's a lot of digging.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What were you surprised most, what surprised you most on the project?
What surprised me most was how many stones had fallen over and then how thick they were, because many ones that were fallen over had sunk in with time, and so we had to dig around it and then pick it up. And what also surprised me is the different gravestone companies that had been around in the 1800s, and with the different styles, and you can see that some were more efficient than others, because a few of them you could spray water and you could read the whole thing, but other ones you really make up.
Pretty good. Any other questions?
I have another question. What was the earliest date that you found?
I think it was 1824.
Yeah, there was, when we stopped by that day, there was quite a few stones from that time period. So it's definitely one of the older cemeteries in town.
A lot of families died in rapid succession, and then a few of them had children a few months after, and then because of different epidemics of typhoid and diphtheria, diseases were easily communicable. So,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, they had their own pandemics.
As I say,
Not so well.
not to be morbid, you go to an old cemetery, it gives you an appreciation of modern medicine, that's for sure. So the commission, I know, really enjoyed working with Lizzie, was super amazing, very, very impressed. I just want to mention, we've got Lynn Seymour, who's the chair of the commission this year. Ryan McClinchy is back there, Gail Winters is here, and I think I've got everybody, or John Shearer is here. And I know on behalf of the commission, Linda wanted to say a couple of words of thanks to Lizzie and the commission's appreciation for working with her, so.
Just stand or? Thank you, Lizzie. Great job, Lizzie. I'm sure your parents are very proud. It was wonderful working with you to them. I'd like to express gratitude on behalf of the Historic Preservation Commission. Not only for Lizzie. Lizzie had two visions. The vision that she saw when she walked by that cemetery and saw that it was in such disarray and with the obelisk leaning, but the other vision that she could make a difference. And I hope that that has appealed to a lot of individuals, not only here, but who might be listening, that this is an ongoing type of a project. And while it falls under the domain of the Historic Preservation Commission, it really is the responsibility of this entire community to make sure that these places are not forgotten. They are our history. They are the people who founded this community. Thank you, Gail, who spearheads this subcommittee for the commission, and she's done a wonderful job throughout the years and manages to get a lot of individuals every year to go to the various cemeteries and to note the changes and what needs to be done. A special thank you to the people who showed up for 4 days, and you've mentioned some of them, Brian McGinty and Paul Stephanie, Paul Bang, John was there, of course, and some spouses. We managed to drag a couple of spouses. Thank you, Lynn McGinty and my husband, Ray. Joe Ferranini is a remarkable individual. He has a company called Gravestone Matters. And he was not only an instructor, but he too is a historian and could tell us about all the things that we were learning about when we were doing the restoration and helping him. He had some phenomenal equipment, and all the guys were in awe as they saw him work with his gantry and all of this. And he did work, as Lizzie said, he worked 10, 11, 12 hours, 4 days, and he was paid for 2 of them. So we owe him a great debt of gratitude. We also thank Dan Bull from the Highway Department here, who provided signs and cones for the safety of the workers, and for Dan Clements, who went over with his men and was able to fill in and seed around that obelisk to make sure that it is secure and in place, and that the grass is going to be growing in the spring. Thanks to supervisor and councilman, and especially our liaison, James Whalen, and for the taxpayers who support the commission and subsidize some of the work on this project. More needs to be done in the cemetery. There are still stones that are buried. The fence that is there are stones that we have found that now are on the outside of that fence. So we have to address putting the fence in the proper place. There are trees that are, excuse me, 6 to 7 inches in diameter that need to come down because they're going to be undermining some of the gravestones. So there's still a lot of work there. And we're also looking at other cemeteries such as the Ramsey Cemetery that is a often 146 and can't even be seen at all because it's so overgrown. People here, scouts, not only Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, anyone who wants to get involved in doing this, wants to be part of a committee and earn some brownie points in more ways than one, we are certainly open to volunteers to help us. So thank you and congratulations, Lizzie, and also to the other scout who's going to be making a presentation tonight. So thank you very much.
So again, thank you, Lizzie. We appreciate your efforts. And if somebody else wants to undertake a similar project, I'm sure you're available to consult.
And just as an ode to the future for my gold award, which is
70 or 80. Yeah.
which is about a 70 or 80 hour project. I plan to do something with one flag.
Very good. 70 to 80 hours. Wow. That's a good one. And then you're done after that, right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Lizzie. We appreciate it very much. All right, we are also fortunate to have Boy Scout amongst us, Eagle Scout Everett Noakes. And Everett completed his project a while ago now, but COVID hit, and we haven't had him at a meeting yet to discuss his project, and we were able to work this out tonight. Everett's a fine young man who has been working hard towards attaining the rank of Eagle Scout. He got there, he's done, and this is the project that put him over the top. So take it away, Everett.
Hello, everybody. My name is Everett Noakes. I'm an Eagle Scout out of Troop 4042 out of Round Lake, New York. last fall, I came across a project improving the Locust Lane Park here. I quickly found myself talking to Mr. Barrett and the Parks and Recreation Department, and in the end working with the Buildings and Grounds Department. At first, I bounced around in the different projects I wanted to do, but in the end, I found this right here as the most beneficial to the community. Whereas you have two big roads crossing each other here, and I figured, unfortunately not this past summer, but the summer before and many others, we have droves of residents coming into the park and using the town pool. And I figured I could use a little sprucing up here. And I decided to put in around 300 feet of fencing and a perennial garden with some picnic tables out front. At first, I found myself working with the Parks and Recreation Department after I talked to Mr. Barrett. And we went through a lot of meetings discussing different aspects of the project and how it'll be most safe and enjoyable for the town residents to use. The materials used and the process of obtaining the materials were through the town and several different companies, whereas I fundraised money here. I fundraised money through a plant sale, which was mainly donated through a family company with my aunt and uncle. They were nice and donated tons of plants where I was able to use this to fundraise for money. On a Saturday and Sunday morning, I had the plant sale out front. Right here, this was after the project was done. And before this, the plant sale was done for several hours in the morning of both days. In the end, raising around $900. I had lots of community residents stop by during the time and acknowledging the project's development. At first here, the first thing I did after obtaining the materials through companies, I was able to go to Home Depot and several other landscaping companies in order to obtain my materials for the fencing, which was by far the hardest part of the project. As an Eagle Scout project, the Boy Scouts of America requires no time limit given for work and planning, but in the end, over 350 hours were conducted between plannings, meetings, drawings, and the actual work here. The fencing took about a day, where we put in over 25 fence posts from one side of the middle of the park here to the other. They were short fence posts where they were noticeable enough where people can't trip over them, and but cars couldn't park on the side. Connecting them, I put 1-inch thick manila rope, which is still holding its life today. And this was definitely the hardest part because little did I know there's over 10 steps in putting in the fence post here. They were over 7.5 feet tall initially, and putting them in, I put them in at that length and evenly cut them down with a chainsaw. In the span of the day, I put in all these fence posts with a few other scouts and family and friends came by to assist me in the work and development of the project that day. We were able to tie around the rope to each fence post so they looked nice on the outside, hacking down the dirt and grass in the holes, and filling in the sides so that they were safe for people to walk in, on, and around, where nobody could, there's no leftover holes or places where somebody could trip. I put this through, on the end here, I left about a 50 to 75 foot span, where in case of an emergency or development, the town or other emergency vehicles could still access even if the parking lot was blocked from the connection of the 4 roads here, where they could drive through or people could walk up, since there's a lot of people who walk dogs and walk around here. This picture here is where this was about at noon on that Saturday, where I was able to put in all the fence posts at first, and before cutting them down, pack the dirt down and keep them in from shaking around, because we needed to keep it so that they were still safe for the residents to walk or even lean on if they had to, and they would not move, so that for years to come they're still able to be used and safe. In the end, this is what the perennial garden out front, where walking up it looked very nice. Before it was just weeds and overgrown grass, and it didn't look the best, so I took it into consideration and did the perennial garden, which was also by the use of donated plants, and put in several perennials along the way, which was also pretty hard because we did have to dig out, fertilize, and mulch the area before and after putting in the plants here. I put them around in a right angle so that people could still walk in and enjoy the benches right here. Mulching it looked nice for years to come because the perennials will continue to grow well and bloom every fall and spring. The walkway here, before it was just a stone, and I was able to clean up the edges, making it look really nice where people could walk in and around, so that for years to come, people can walk around it again.
Is that it, or are we missing anything?
No, I think a few are missing, but I can still,
Oh, okay.
I can still talk this stuff. Throughout the development of the project, I worked last October and November was the actual work days of the project. But before that, there was a lot leading up to it. For the entire spring and summer, I was working with the town in order to really make sure the project went well and was safe for the community to use while still in the development of the project. And as I said before, there's over 350 hours into the planning, and the town was very nice. I had the park committee help me out, and they were very nice and scheduled. I think it was over 15 meetings that we had at the town hall, where several people showed up every single time and helped me, giving me advice along the way, so that we definitely had a concrete plan for the project. After getting submitted to the council in the scouts, I was able to get my signatures needed to start the project, and after that I conducted the fundraising efforts for the project with a plant sale and several other small sales that I was able to put together to have enough money for the project. And over $1,200 was raised to conduct the project, and we ended up using all of that, filling it in with plants and stuff around the fence posts, and get a good post and rope for years to come, so that the town, it's easier for them to maintain it, and there's no access work in the future. In the end, it was a very nice project that had several family and friends show up, where we were able to have a pretty good time. It was very safe, and I was able to get a lot of people together to keep the project going. And after November of 2019, I submitted my project final application to the town, where I had Mr. Barrett and my scoutmaster and the council in the district sign all the signatures that I needed, and the project went very well. I got a lot of good feedback from residents that I actually had a few come out and try and help throughout the day, those 2 weekends, and they all seemed very happy during that time.
Yes, thank you, Everett, very much. Everett picked that location out in front of the Locust Lane Pool because he lives nearby and wanted to do something to improve the neighborhood. And I think you made a great selection between the fencing and the great deal of work that you undertook to plan and execute that endeavor, but also the garden. Just a very, very nice improvement for the town. And you're right, usually we'd have a lot of people, right, in and out of that area every year. But there's a tremendous amount of people that pass by as well, automobiles, walking, bikes, and I know that they appreciate what you did, so thank you. I know I saw your dad earlier. Did your mom make it? She was at the ice rink. Oh, Alice, how you doing? Good to see you. So we did have a lot of meetings on the project, and I know your parents were behind you 110%, and they were a big part of that planning process, and I'm sure they were there for the work as well. So again, thank you very much. Is there anything else that you want to say? Or?
No, does anybody have any questions? Yes, I did have 2 picnic tables that we were also able to put into the inside, not at the project location, but behind the fence inside the town pool, so that people could also use those. This year we didn't have anybody at the pool, but hopefully next year and years to come, we're able to have people use them.
Oh, we just spent a lot of money on the new liner for the pool, so yeah, I hope it's over. Well, thanks again, Everett, we really appreciate it.
Congratulations, the project really does look good. It's near my house too. So I really do appreciate it. You cleaned up that area very nicely, so job well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, my friend. Keep it, now you're an Eagle Scout.
Yes.
And he's gained a few inches. He's grown a few inches just since the last time we met. So you're, how old are you now? Getting up there. Because you're a young Eagle Scout.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a young man. So he's well before his 18th birthday, which is the magic age for Eagle Scouts. So thank you, Everett. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, man that needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. Town historian John Shear. John, some years ago, wrote bits of Clifton Park history. He recently completed the 2nd edition in the series, More Bits of Clifton Park history. And he's here to tell us about it. How you doing tonight?
Thanks, Phil. I just want to congratulate Lizzie on her project. We all learned a lot in helping out there, and it certainly is a vast improvement in the cemetery. And just a little bit of general information about that cemetery. There was actually a church there at one time. It was built in 1795. It was a Dutch Reformed church. So the cemetery was actually in back of the church. And the land was given by this, I can't remember his first name, his last name was Millius, which is why it's the Millius Cemetery. And his house was on the corner of Moe and Clifton Park Center Road. It's now a pocket park.
Oh,
yeah. So that's where the house was. And in the 1860s, the congregation had dwindled, and they couldn't raise the money to maintain the church. And finally, towards the end of 1867, they sold it, and it was moved across the road and was used as a barn for that farm. And in 1979, the snow collapsed the barn. So a little bit of background information. This is the first town board meeting I've been to since the shutdown in March due to COVID, and certainly is different from the last town board meeting I've been at. We should get some pictures of this.
We're making history tonight.
That's exactly
All the
right.
masks, the distancing.
And it was because of the pandemic that all of a sudden, mid-March, I had all this time on my hands. Everything was canceled. And so I decided and wanted to do a sequel to Bits of Clifton Park History, which we did in 2003. And last 5 years I've been trying to figure it out, because when I did the first book, all I had to do was provide the text and the photographs. There was a graphic artist who designed the book, and I just provided the material. Well, he's no longer in business, and I couldn't find somebody else who could do this. So now that I had the time, I sort of used the first volume as a model, and by hook or crook, figured out how to insert pictures and captions, and sometimes it was very, very frustrating. I would spend hours trying to figure out why all my text moved over the photograph, stuff like that, but because I had all the time in the world, I muddled through it. And at any rate, I was very pleased to get it done. I finished it about June. We got our estimates for it. And also because of the pandemic, I did not go to my annual conference. So I saved a lot of money in my budget. And Mila, also because of the pandemic, was not able to do a lot of her programs. And bless her heart, she came up with some money from her budget as well. So between our two budgets that weren't spent because of the pandemic, we got this book printed. And it's a sequel to the first book. It's a compilation of the articles that I've written since 2003. And the cover, I don't know if any of you can tell me what the building is on the cover. You probably can't see it that well. There's a blow-up of it there. Mila, you already know, so don't speak out. Anybody know what this building is? It's still standing in our town.
Is that the feed store?
Does anybody go to Clifton Park Pizza?
Yeah, the feed store on Main Street.
Yeah, that's Clifton Park
Yeah, when
Pizza.
you told me that, I said, boy, that doesn't look like it.
In 1885. That's it, it's still there.
Yeah.
And the back photograph is the store in Rexford, which is no longer there. That was taken down in 1964. So just as a teaser, the very first article in here, in the introduction, is about our town seal, which Bill was talking about earlier. And the town seal was a result of a contest we had to celebrate the American Revolution bicentennial. And it was a contest, and we gave, I think it was a $50 savings bond.
Yes, it
winner.
was, yeah.
And Phil, you've met the man who
Yes.
did it. And there's a lot of meaning in it. So the article tells you what symbolism is in that seal. There's also a story about finding the dedication plaque for Lock 19 on the Erie Canal. And it's amazing, when we found that, it was nowhere near the canal. There's also a lot of oral histories in here. We'll learn about Edgar Schottmeyer, who married his wife.
Yeah.
And does anybody remember Cattell's Agatorium? No? Well, in the 1970s, 60s and 70s, it was on Bishop Ferry Road, and they sold eggs, farm eggs, and it's now the Oaks subdivision. So you can learn about that. And another interesting thing was a headless rooster in 1905. Neighboring farm, they cut off this chicken's head, and the chicken continued to live for about 3 months. And Dr. McElroy couldn't get over it. He was very interested in breeding animals and judging animals at the fair in Boston Spa. And he went to check this out. And yes, this chicken still lived at his head. They fed it through its gullet.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, there's more.
What, did it win a prize at the fair? Must have won some kind of prize. I mean, how can you not, how can you not give a prize to that?
Anyways, there's a lot of interesting stuff in here, and, I should say that, for those who don't have the first volume, we have a special. Each book sells for $20 a piece. But right now, when you buy the new book.
For the holidays.
If you don't have the earlier book and would like it, it's only $10. You can get them both for $30. So, and they're available here at the town hall.
But where do the proceeds go, John?
Where do the proceeds go?
Where do the proceeds go?
They go back into the town till.
Room staff.
Excuse me?
Room staff.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So, yes,
We're using history to preserve more history.
make wonderful Christmas presents.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, very much. Appreciate that. And the gentleman that drew the first town seal that John just referenced, sent me a commercial news article from 1981, and John's in the picture, with somebody else in the picture, I can't remember the name.
I think it's Evelyn Dash. Could it be Evelyn Dash?
I think it was, yeah. I think it was. So, yeah, 1981, the commercial news article. So we'll have that posted tomorrow as well. But thank you, John. Appreciate it. Those books are very important and something we'll continue to appreciate for many years to come. That the history of the town is chronicled in picture and word. It's a tremendous service to the town. Thank you. Next up, Clifton Park. We have our exalted ruler here, Bill Tierney, and his able sidekick, Mr. Greg Masterson. Well, do you have a title this year, Greg? You're
Past exalted.
Oh, I mean, other than past exalted.
He's the bodyguard. I mean, when I get
Come on up,
he's got
sir.
the gold shield and everything.
Yeah, right.
Jay, I like the socks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Each year, the Elks are kind enough to come and remind us about a program. It revolves around Red Ribbon Week. So, Bill, if you could tell us about this initiative and why it's important.
Well, it's basically very important to us, because Red Ribbon Week celebrates the oldest and largest drug prevention awareness program. This was started after the death of the Drug Enforcement Administration Special Agent Enrique Camaria in 1985. He was killed by drug traffickers while he was investigating drugs in Mexico. Basically, this was a tribute started by a high school friend of his and a congressman who created the Camaria clubs and wearing of the red ribbon to show their opposition to drugs. It became more or less nationwide in 1988 with the National Family Partnership. It created the first National Red Ribbon Week with President Reagan and his wife serving as honorary chairpersons. And this is how it's taken on national significance, and it continues today, supported strongly by the Elks. Wearing of the red ribbons during the month of October to represent our pledge to live drug-free and honor the sacrifice of all those who lost their lives fighting against drugs. The thing is, we have a lot of material when we start talking about drugs. Everybody thinks about all the big ones, heroin, marijuana. We also look at the idea of smoking, drinking, vaping, and now they're even talking about all of the prescription drugs that basically people are using. And there is a October 26th is a national drug take-back day. That a lot of communities, a lot of the enforcement agencies are participating in to take back drugs that you don't use, that, could be dangerous to anybody. So I encourage anybody to investigate disposal. Recently, I had a reason to take about a huge amount of drugs back, and CVS has a disposal bin, which is very good, just to get rid of all these things rather than flushing them down the toilet and destroying our water system. So it's one of those things people should look at. I know that the state police on occasion have the drug take back, and they post that. Usually it's in the newspaper, and I think you actually put it on your website for it. And then, of course, I handed out all red ribbons to everybody on the board. And Miss Teresa, who is one of my good friends that I just smiled. It used to be every week when I came over and did my bingo reports. Now, unfortunately, it's down to monthly. And I thank the board.
Thank you, Bill, very much. I appreciate you coming by. How are things at the Elks overall? I know you're staying active. There's still.
We had drive-in bingo,
Yeah.
parking lot bingo.
I heard it was very busy too.
We had 160 players, 67 players.
Socially distanced.
The drive-in bingo, that's
They were everywhere.
That's pretty darn good.
Every other parking space, and basically they had, if it was even numbers on one row, it was odd numbers on the other. And then we got our own little smoking section up there.
You took care of everybody, right?
Well, we had a complaint that people were smoking in their cars, like, okay. Well, it bothered me, okay, fine, so we had a smoking section. And Teresa was very happy when I came in. Said, are you gonna give me money? And we've had the car show in August. Which
Yeah, that was a success.
We helped support another car show, which we did reasonably well. We had our Traverse Day barbecue. We started our Friday night dinners. We're doing a lot of takeouts through that now. We had 40 takeouts last Friday. This Friday is German. And basically, they're talking about if they want takeouts, start calling around 4:30. And we start serving at 6.
Fantastic. Well, for more information about the Elks, you can find their website. They have a lot of great information about their schedule, newsletter. It's also there for a lot of good information if you're interested in joining or becoming just part of what they do, and that is to have fun, but also promote patriotism within our community, and also brotherhood and assisting others in need. And those are very, very strong attributes that the Elks possess in helping our town.
We also do scholarships.
And scholarships.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Greg, very much. Okay. Now, before we go to resolutions, it is budget time, and I did mention that at the beginning of budget time, that it would be, as expected, a busy budget year. Once we unveiled the first cut of the budget, I mentioned that with so many moving parts, that there might be more changes than normal when it comes to the budget process for 2021. One area in particular that I want to talk about tonight is our Clifton Park transfer station, and it is an important entity in the town and one that we talk about quite often for various reasons. One, it serves a tremendous valuable, as a valuable resource within our town for many reasons. And also has been an area where we've been able to make some significant operational changes to save money over the years. And I think more is needed in that regard now. So I do have some ideas for consideration moving forward, and wanted to talk about those this evening. Now, one thing we've talked about over the last several budget cycles, at least, is the declining number of permits. Am I going here, Matt?
Yeah, it's good.
I think I've seen that before. There we go. The current situation is we have a continuing decline of permits. That's something that has been a trend for a good number of years. Looking back in past years, we always had a high number of general permits. The general permits are the ones that are 100, and then the senior permits, which are 50. And as the years have gone on, they've come closer and closer to the point now where we have a few hundred more senior permits than we do general permits. The reason for that is, and I just have a couple of quick data points here. 2021, currently we have 1,521 general permits and 1,824 senior permits. We'll probably pick up a little more, but by this time of the year, people are either going to buy the transfer station permit or not. So we have a bad business model currently. We have a situation where we have a number of people each year that age into the senior category, which means we're deriving half the revenue that we received from that same customer the year before. And then you add to that obviously we're not seeing a large number of general permit holders, which would be non-senior citizen holders, that are purchasing permits. So therefore, each year our senior permits have gone up a little bit, but the general permits have declined rapidly. In the last year, I would say it escalated a little bit. I think a lot of that has to do, well, I think there's a couple of reasons. One, societal, as far as people, are they going to put the garbage in their vehicle and bring it to the transfer station? Is the savings between having it picked up at the end of your driveway or versus the transfer station permit, is that enough of a savings, considering all the other household costs that people have? Is that difference really enough to put the stuff in my car and bring it to the transfer station? And I think that's where the rubber meets the road. In 2015, for instance, we had 2,200 general permits, 1,673 on the seniors. So you can see how seniors have gone up a little bit, and the others have, the general permits have gone down. So that's where we stand there. So that trend continues. Now we tried some different things. We offer out-of-town permits at a higher price. So people that don't live in Clifton Park can buy a permit. We've had 9, 10 at a time on that. We've changed the hours. So we have a couple of days where you can come at 7 o'clock in the morning instead of 8. And you can arrive later than the hours were set previously. The Friday hours as well as the Saturday hours we kept the same. And those are two very busy days. Now, the current situation for the transfer station, the town has always subsidized the operation of the transfer station heavily. And we have worked to add additional reoccurring revenues over the years that we've included within the budget of the transfer station, which has lessened the overall subsidy, but it's still, as you can see, very substantial, 150,000 average annually over the last three-year period. Now, I will say there was a $62,000 project in there for a hopper repair, so that counted towards 2017. But for 19, 18, and 17, the average subsidy was $150,000. Now, those reoccurring sources of revenue that I mentioned, county waste, yard waste collection, we derive $60,000 in revenue from that. The Saratoga County Recycling Center, we've had that agreement with the county for a few years now, where they no longer have a full-time person working at the county recycling center, and the town has taken on responsibility for managing the area. And we have the solar farm lease, which is $8,400 per year. Now, that's the solar farm lease, that's just the lease of the land. Then we benefit about $50,000 a year, roughly, in energy credits for the energy that is derived at the solar farm. So even with that, just over $100,000 in recurring revenue, we still have a substantial subsidy. Continuing with the current situation, our longtime transfer station manager, Jeff Vetter, is retiring after 38 years with the town. So we thank Jeff for his many years of service and done a great job managing the transfer station through the years. We also changed the hours, as I just mentioned, get a little earlier in the morning, a little later at night. Now, when we expanded the amount of hours on certain days, we had to reduce them on other days, or pick a day to reduce the hours, because, obviously, we're already running a subsidy. We don't want to extend the hours and end up paying overtime and just have more costs. So Wednesday was chosen because that has been the slowest day as far as foot traffic to the transfer station. So the new Wednesday hours became 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., and that's where it stands now. So, looking ahead, things that we're always working toward, reducing operating costs, streamlining operations, removing silos between town departments, and we do need to invest in equipment for a larger department with budgetary savings for the town. So these are all core parts of our SOP, but definitely are important in making changes at the transfer station. So one way to reduce costs and remove silos and streamline government operations is to bring the transfer station and the Buildings and Grounds Department together. Years ago, the transfer station was run by the Highway Department, and that was changed at some point in the 90s. So now this idea would be to combine the Building and Grounds Department with the transfer station. So at this would be the new proposed organizational chart. At the top there, you see Dan Clemens, who's currently the head of our Buildings and Grounds. His assistant at Buildings and Grounds, Karen Lynch, reports to Dan. And then we would have a transfer station manager, which is a different position than Jeff Vetter. Jeff Vetter was transfer station supervisor. Don has been with the town for 26 years, has a lot of experience. He runs the facility when Jeff is not present. So he would basically continue in that same capacity with a small amount of additional responsibilities. He would report to directly to Karen and Dan Clemens in that organizational chart. As you can see below, we have all of the different employees that are assigned to the transfer station and buildings and grounds. Now, this would also offer some, as I said, some streamlining, sharing of resources as well as personnel. As you can see in the middle of the org chart, there's dotted lines back and forth between the employees of what will be one department now. But there are some differences, obviously, between their schedules and such, so we need to talk a little bit about that as well. Our action items for making this happen. And we're off the screen a little bit there, Matt. I don't know if you can fix that at all, but I'll move forward as you're trying to do that. Some action items to fulfill all of the goals that I mentioned previously. The first would be to completely close the transfer station on Wednesdays. As I mentioned, currently it's open from 7 a.m. to 11. That should be 11 a.m. That's some overtime.
But then you're closing it.
Matt, are you trying to get some overtime? 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. As I mentioned, this is the slowest day historically for the transfer station. Then obviously, if we were to close, we have the current employees assigned to the transfer station that would not have a full week, so they could be deployed for either projects at the transfer station, and I know there's some that can be completed, or they could be deployed for other assignments in the town within buildings and grounds, since at that point they'll be all one department. That next action item would be to replace the cat loader that's currently at the transfer station. We talked at the budget workshop about some options, and based on the condition, there's at least $40,000 of repairs that will need to be made, as Jeff brought up at the budget workshop, and we had a discussion about that. And so when considering purchasing new, or in this case, in 2019, we're spending $40,000 to fix the cab. I think it makes sense to lease a new machine, and obviously there's some value to the machine we have, and roughly $20,000 to $30,000. That number needs to get nailed down, and that would be a trade-in situation. So that would be the other item that I would propose, and that is something that is needed very much. They do use the loader on a daily basis for many different things. This year, Teresa Brobson and the clerk's office did a great job. She and I talked about it when COVID had hit and New York shut down. Seniors typically visit the clerk's office. They have to provide proof of their age and to make sure that they qualify. And it didn't make sense to have people do that. Why not do it by mail? We know who had a senior permit last year. They didn't get a year younger. So why do they need to prove their age? So she and her team sent all the current senior permit holders a letter, and we renewed those permits by mail, and by all accounts it went very well, right, Teresa? Yeah, so I appreciate that. Obviously, if you are a senior that has not purchased a permit in the past, then wanted to purchase a permit, you can still do that. We just need to have you come in person. Well, perhaps we can do the same thing for the regular permits. And we'll make that a little easier based on another suggestion I have here coming up, that all returning permits for general permits will be sold, renewed through mail, and that'll reduce administrative duties at the transfer station. Because they do take a lot of time to sell the permits each year. So I think that would be a good change to save money and certainly save them a lot of time. So, further proposals for action items as we get into the 21-22 permit season next year. One idea would be to eliminate the annual permit system for the future. So if you're a permit holder, say you have a permit now for the year 2021, you get into the springtime, which is when we sell the permits for the 21-22 season. You can renew your permit by mail, and we'll have a process in place similar to how we handle the senior accounts. If you don't have a permit by then, well, if you do have a permit, you'd be grandfathered in. If you don't have a permit, then we're going to close out the ability to buy permits. So at that point, if you don't have a permit by the time we're selling them again next year, then you can't get one. But if you have a permit, you can keep it. So I don't want anybody to think that the idea would be to change the system for current customers. That's not the case at all. What we would implement is a new bag system for household garbage. Now there would be town of Clifton Park bags. They would be clear bags, 33-gallon bags. We'd sell them for $4. They'd have town of Clifton Park printed in big bold letters. And we can begin that program anytime. We can start it as soon as we get the bags, if we decide to go in that direction. I suggest that we do. I did visit the Saratoga Springs transfer station, which is a much smaller operation than ours. But I wanted to get an idea about how their bag system works, and there's other transfer stations that use this same option. But it was very, very simple and something that we can implement very quickly. There's a contractor on state contract that they use to purchase their bags, so that is one source that we can research to buy bags. So again, if you have a permit, when we go into selling permits next spring, if you have a permit, you have the option to be renewed for 21-22 and forever, as long as you want to buy one. So you'd be grandfathered into the permit system. Anybody else can use the bag option. Some people might find the bag option might work better for them. Hard to say. It's a 33-gallon bag, so it's a good sized bag. You can fit a few regular size kitchen garbage bags inside one. But that would be people's choice leading up to next spring. So, a couple other things I want to mention before I take any questions. You can flip the lights there, Matt, please. I wanted to make a couple of points because I did meet with, before I brought this idea forward, I wanted to make sure that it was something that was doable and had some level of support within the town. I want to thank Tom McCarthy for doing a lot of legwork on a lot of the questions that came up. But just a few points I want to make. Current transfer station employees would remain assigned to the facility because they work a Tuesday through Saturday schedule. and they would continue to work that schedule. Now, when it comes to our buildings and grounds employees, they were not hired under the expectation that they would work a Saturday. So I don't think we're in a position to say to our buildings and grounds employees that, oh, by the way, now we want you to start working a Saturday schedule from time to time. So the current buildings and grounds employees that were hired under the expectation of a Monday through Friday schedule would not be expected to work Saturdays at the transfer station unless they wanted to. That might occur. We might get volunteers, or we might get somebody that says, gee, I had to take a day off during the week for a reason, and can I work Saturday so I don't have to use any paid time off this week, that kind of thing. So we could get volunteers, but it would be strictly on a volunteer basis. And with the current transfer station employees that we have in place, there's enough of them there, obviously, that wouldn't be an issue. Because they were hired under the expectation that they would work a Saturday. I think this is one of the things I mentioned to the union too, was, this opens 2 direct tracks for advancement for employees within one department. And I think that is a positive for the employees of both the transfer station and buildings and grounds. All new employees that would be hired under a buildings and grounds department, as you see it there with transfer station, buildings and grounds being one department, all new employees would be hired under the expectation that they may work a Saturday on occasion when directed and assigned. So anybody new, and we will be looking to fill a position soon. Pat Gibbons retired, as I mentioned at the last meeting, so big shoes to fill, but the new employee that is hired would be expected to work a Saturday, not on a regular schedule, but on occasion. Maybe somebody's on vacation and they fill in, maybe it's an emergency situation, who knows? But we just want to work with everybody and make it as workable as possible. And at the end of the day, we'd have, as far as, we always get into this in town, out of town, for years you had to be a resident to purchase a transfer station permit. Then we went to the non-resident, which was more expensive. But with the bag system, we could open it up to residents and non-residents, so that wouldn't be an issue. We already accept bulk items and construction debris from residents or non-residents. That's because we charge additional funds for that. So we don't check anybody's license when they come in with bulk items, construction debris, electronics for that matter. Electronics can be very difficult to get rid of. And the recycling center, that's a county function, so that's open to residents and non-residents as well. The only service that would continue to be only for Clifton Park residents would be the yard waste drop-off opportunity. Now, Jeff is leaving in a couple of weeks, so in the short term, we do need to consider if we're going to move in this direction that we have an organizational chart and people in the positions they should be to make things work. And I'm very confident the way Dan and Karen have performed over the last couple of years since they have ascended to those positions, that they're more than capable of handling the responsibility and doing a great job with it. Now there will be some additional responsibilities with the 3 people I mentioned. There's no doubt about that. There will be issues that arise on a Saturday that Dan or Karen wouldn't normally deal with. There's going to be scheduling a lot more scheduling oversight that needs to happen. So I would propose an increase for Dan and Kieran, as well as Don McCune, who I mentioned would be the transfer station manager, reporting to Kieran and Dan Clemens. There's also job titles, slight changes in job titles or descriptions that we will need to consummate as well. So I think that's everything that I had as far as the ideas for, again, those 4 goals, which can be difficult to do, but I think the opportunity is there. The need is certainly there. It's necessary to reduce operating expenses and streamline operations as often as possible. The silos that we erased over the years between departments has been beneficial to the taxpayers, as well as made town operations much more efficient. So those are some ideas that I'm suggesting as far as changing the operational makeup of 2 departments and 1 important facility that, as you can see, is not growing. It's contracting and moving in the wrong direction from a business standpoint. And in the town, we make good business decisions. And I think this is a very sound and necessary business decision. Are there any questions? Does the board have any questions? Yes?
You're eliminating Jeff Vedder's position?
Yes, that is correct.
So you want to combine 2 departments, eliminate the position,
Right,
and put more work on Mr. Clemens and Mr. Lynch.
yep, right.
Year round.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that's your level of support from those gentlemen? You mentioned you had a level of support when you were putting this together.
What do you mean?
When you were talking, Mr. Supervisor, you had mentioned that before you.
Oh, yeah, they're aware of it.
Forward,
Is that
you
what you
had
mean?
level of support.
Yes, are you aware that they're aware
Where
of it?
that level of support comes from?
Yeah,
Just
from,
from the employees
yes, and the union.
and the union?
Yeah.
Are there any elimination of union positions in this?
No,
There is an elimination of a position.
yes,
you're
transfer
eliminating-
station supervisor, correct.
You're eliminating a supervisor, and essentially putting more work on 2 gentlemen who already have a significant amount of work to do.
Yeah. You know what I find works? Give something to somebody who's busy and effective and efficient. 9.9 times out of 10, they will not disappoint you.
They've never disappointed us.
And there's a lot of people that work for the
the
town that have been in that position and have taken on responsibility and done a great job.
Yes, they have done a great job.
And I think,
Their jobs are busy.
I won't speak for them, but I think they're very much looking forward to the opportunity.
Should have happened.
I said, look forward to the opportunity, yeah.
You had mentioned on your organizational chart, Dan Clemens' new position would be titled Director of Buildings, Parks, and Recreation.
Yep.
How does that differ from the current Parks and Recreation Department that we currently have? Why duplicate the name?
It's a civil service title.
Could be a little confusing. Now, who are we talking about? Director of Parks and Rec or Director of Buildings and Parks and Rec? We're very close. So we've got Lila Kramer,
Oh, so
Director of
you-
Parks
so
and
you-
Rec, and then we've got Dan Clemens, who may be Director of Buildings and
Oh.
Parks and Rec.
All right. I don't get confused about their roles and what they do.
The titles are very similar. Are they both, is it one and the same, Tom?
No,
They're different.
the titles as described in the civil service, description, job description that the county HR. The Parks and Rec Department, as we have it now, are all program positions. And the
the Parks and Recreation, the buildings, Parks and Recreation title is more similar to what our B&G guys do now. They take care of the commons and Collins Park and those active parks as well as other town facilities. So the functioning are different in the role, in the job description.
How is recreation defined in this new department?
It's really just, well, to the extent that, Kieran maintains and repairs all the equipment that supports the parks as well. as all the
Recreation
facilities.
equipment,
Yeah,
like field.
right.
Yeah, and as you can see in the title, buildings, parks, and recreation. So obviously, they're very involved in all three.
So would we, I noticed, you had mentioned that we would be considering an increase in salaries for Dan, Kieran, and Don, correct?
Correct.
Do we have numbers on that yet, or is that something that you will be forwarded to us?
Yeah, so, what about this year? The number for next year, for all three, would be a total of 15,994.
Between the three?
Dan Clemens would move to a grade 10, step 10, year 3, Kieran at 822, Don McCune 783.
So $15,000 increase between the three employees. You're eliminating a
16.
90, some, whatever.
It's in the budget for 97.
Right. I think Jeff's, what in the budget for next year, was proposed 97,000 in Jeff's position, should he have stayed. But just $15,000 for that amount of work seems very low, and I look forward to the, conversations moving forward in the budget.
Sure.
I just think that's a lot of work to put on two gentlemen that are already maxed out in their department.
I don't think so.
I think so.
I work with them every day. I don't think they're maxed out. I don't think they think they're maxed out. And they're actually excited for the opportunity. And, the good thing is we have a very experienced crew down there now at the transfer station. So it's not as if it's a whole new group of people coming in that don't know what happens down there. Don McCune runs the facility when Jeff Vedder isn't there, so he would continue to do that. Yet he would report to Kieran and Dan. So
They're all fine employees. I have no doubt that they would go above and beyond. They always do when we ask them to. My concern is that this is way above and beyond. That's my concern. We have continuously asked our employees to do more with less, including Mr. Clemens, including Mr. Lynch. And I am concerned that this is asking a little bit too much. That's my opinion.
yeah. Oh, okay, sure. Understood. I don't agree at all. They have incredible potential that ahead of them to be to bring the transfer station into the future. And to bring it under one department. The other nice thing about having it in one department is the ability to directly share employees back and forth, which gives buildings and grounds and the town a tremendous amount of flexibility, and cost savings will be realized there as well. So, the facility is not in a situation where it is growing and expanding with our main source of revenue, which is the household garbage permits. As far as the reoccurring revenue items put together, I don't know how long those will last. Well, I'm pretty sure on the land lease on the solar, I guess that's another 20 years or so. But as far as the other two, which are the main ones, I mean, Can't tell you how long those are gonna stay. So you can imagine the explosion of that subsidy if and when either of those sources of revenue, or perhaps both of them, end up going away. So, I think it's time to act now and make this happen. And it's a great move for the town for many reasons. Yeah.
Do we, get to vote on this, or is it just going to be the transition?
Yeah, you get to,
Something
you get
that's
to.
going
Yep.
And when, are you looking at that? Because I too, think the transfer station staff-wise is maxed out, so they're very busy in the day-to-day operation. Really takes 100% of each of the employees there. So I also, because putting in grounds is also the same situation, and oftentimes may want to lean on another department for assistance. I would like to have a lot more. I'd like to interview more people. I'd like to interview Dan, Karen, the employees, go back to the transfer station where I used them, maybe more time than others, realize what the day-to-day operation is. I also think this might be taxing on Dan or Karen who have to be physically at the transfer station simply because when necessary, do the job they have to do. I hope we're not gonna rush into this, if you want this done by the end of the year.
Well, Jeff's leaving in a couple of weeks, so the end of the month.
I'd like more time to look at it.
Sure. Very good.
Will there be a public hearing, Mr. Supervisor, about, you mentioned these $4 bags? It seems to me like right now with the system that we have set up, folks, they know how much they have to spend each year and how much they have to budget. With these $4 bags, it seems to me that folks might be paying a little bit more. Is that your estimation with what you learned from Saratoga Springs? I mean, do we know how much on average folks are spending by
Oh,
having
it
$4
all depends
bags?
on how much garbage you have. I have no idea. I mean, people can, I'm sure people can figure out how much garbage they generate on
So
on an
you
average
see the
basis,
prices
and
from
then do some calculations as to how much it might cost them.
So someone right now who's paying $100 a year could theoretically end up paying much more.
Oh, I have no idea. It all depends on each individual situation. Under this scenario, do you think those permit fees can stay the way they are? How much longer is it gonna be before?
I understand.
How much longer is it gonna be before that people that are subsidizing a shrinking number of people's garbage fees at the transfer station? I mean, I don't see how those fees can stay the way they are, or even in that neighborhood, unless we make decisive actions to cut costs and make our operations more efficient.
I don't disagree.
This will make the transfer station stronger. And that's a
I don't
good move.
disagree with you that we need to come up with a solution. Yes, we have been discussing the contraction of and the loss of the subsidizing of the transfer station for years.
Yeah.
It's not the only program that we subsidize. One of the things that we have always been very proud of at this town board is the service that we provide to our residents at the transfer station, knowing that we're not making money off of that. We've been very proud of that we were able to subsidize that as a service. But I don't disagree with you that we need to come up with a solution, but I just don't think that eliminating a position and asking other employees to take on even more responsibilities, knowing how hard and how busy the responsibilities that they have been asked to do in previous years, and now we're just piling more on them. That concerns me a lot, and I don't think that we should make the mistake of moving forward with something on their backs. I mean, I would support perhaps filling Jeff's position, maybe hiring a couple extra employees for a little bit of relief for our current buildings and grounds gentlemen who will be moving over there. I mean, I just don't see merging two departments together and eliminating a position is going to be beneficial. I just don't see production from our employees happening. I think that's something that I'm very concerned about.
Well, that's fine. I mean, I'm in touch, on the ground with these operations 6-7 days a week, day and night. So I have a very good understanding of, the current resources they have, what they need to be successful, and changes that can be made to make our operations much more efficient, provide more advancement for our employees, and streamline operations to save money, which is extremely important, so.
Well, I don't want to waste time. I don't have any more questions. I think we should discuss this outside of this meeting. We've already been here for a long time, but I do have a lot more questions.
Well, go ahead. There's no waste of time here. And, the employees mentioned are looking forward to it, so and believe me, if they weren't, they would tell me.
Correct? Mr. Lynch is currently a union employee.
Yeah.
Will his new position will he be in the union?
Yes.
Okay. And the union is okay with that? You've spoken to
Yeah.
the union?
Yes.
They're okay with that, okay. Well, I too would like to have conversations with the folks directly affected by this. I too have my ear to the ground several days a week just as well. You might not see me, but I'm there. Okay, and I do talk to many of our employees, and a lot of them are struggling to be productive employees. And they are struggling with the fact that we have asked them to do more with less. And that has been a trend that we have seen in the past several years. In almost every department.
Good 20 years, isn't it?
Well, I've only been here for almost 8. And those 8 years, I am constantly and consistently seeing the elimination of positions.
Yeah.
And we do not hire back. And we continually, once we eliminate those positions, we put the responsibility into other departments. And those responsibilities, they get done by whatever means possible. But that process isn't always pretty, and you may not see that, but I do. I do. I am in communication with a lot of our employees as well. It's very difficult for them to respond.
Well, I hope they're busy.
They are busy.
And we've invested a great
They are
deal,
busy,
a
but
great deal of money in
there's a fine
equipment,
line between
and
busy.
equipment and resources and additional salaries over the years to reward them for what they're doing. So I certainly hope they're busy.
They are.
I don't know of any of them that are to the max point where they just can't continue any longer in a day. The work day is too long or something of that nature. When you consider the fringe benefits available at the town, I hear people all the time saying, I can't find people, I can't find workers. We always do. We always do. Because this is a great place to work. Because compared to where a lot of these people come from, working here is more structured. There's more rules and regulations about what the hours they work and what they get paid. They're not in a situation where they're overworked or taken advantage of by any stretch of
Okay,
the
I disagree.
imagination. And that they're taking advantage of.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, very good.
We can have that
I
conversation.
don't know.
Yeah, that leads, I'm going to now, instead of just talking to the employees involved here, I think I'm going to be having some talk with other employees, so I'm not sure we will do the same thing.
Yeah, it's just not. Very good. Any other questions?
Has there been any sort of analysis done? I don't mean to look at Mark, being the comptroller, as to what expected revenues and expenses would be in 2020 under the current structure versus what it would be with the new structure, grandfathering and permits versus the mental with the park grant pay?
Well, we continue to contract permits, the number of permits each year, as has been documented. We can look at the recent trends and make a guess as to, I mean, if I had to guess, I would say we'll have less general permits next year and perhaps a little more on the senior side. I mean, that's the way it's going.
Any projection as to what the trash bag fee will bring in revenue versus the permit system?
Well, it's a brand new offering, and there's really no way to tell what the demand will be. I really don't know.
Compared to Saratoga Springs, anything?
Well, they only have the bag situation, so they don't have a permit situation that we could make a comparison apples to apples.
It's the best guess, I mean, just, you know, the best guess.
Yeah, it's trying to find out and it's trying to come up with ideas that will change the direction of the transfer station from a fiscal standpoint and improve operations. And that's really all this is about.
Well, I don't think any of us doubt that.
Yeah.
From a practical standpoint, the trash bag, is it your proposal that would be the only mechanism by which people can dispose of household trash? If they have that Clifton Park trash bag?
Well, if you had a permit, you can keep getting a permit, don't you?
No. So next year, a resident moves in town, they don't want to pay county waste, whatever.
Right.
And they want to dispose of their household trash, they're not going to turn it over.
Right.
But they have to spend $4 to get that. If they showed up at the transfer station with their regular hefty bag, would they be turned away unless they said, hey, you spent $4, you can put your hefty bag in the Clifton Park trash bag? Is that how it would work? I'm trying to understand how it works. I'm not trying to be glib here. I'm just trying to understand the mechanism.
Yeah, at that point, they would use the bag system.
Okay, so you have to purchase a Clifton Park trash bag to go to the household trash. We're not grandfathered into the permit system.
Well, we have a bag system now where you can pay per bag, but this would be, because we've always had the permit system, we really haven't marketed that option. So with this new option, I would spend a little more time marketing it. And again, I have no idea what the
No, I understand.
what the response is going to be.
But the question is, like, so if a new resident comes to the transfer station with a non-Clifton Park bag, they would be turned away unless they purchase a Clifton Park bag for what their trash is. That's the only mechanism by which a non-grandfathered permit holder could dispose of trash.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I would say too, I would second my colleague's comment here, but I think essentially saying as a town board that you have and listen, people in these positions for a long time, there's a certain, someone who's here for 38 years may perhaps make more money than someone who's not here. But to say that someone who's making $97,000, their responsibility is to be shifted to 3 people, and the cost of the town is $16,000, I think it's somewhat unrealistic. I think it's unfair to those employees who really have to take on those responsibilities. If we were to go that route, I think honestly, higher salaries for those 3 employees is certainly warranted in serious look at. I'm not sure that is sufficient to compensate them for the additional responsibilities we'd be asking.
Well, they are excited for the opportunity, the advancement, as well as the additional pay and taking on that additional role. You know, we're very lucky. We have leadership that the town that not only does a good job, but they're always looking to excel, take on more responsibility, and in this case, assist the town save money. And that's so we're very fortunate in that regard. And it's the right time for many reasons to incorporate these ideas, and we have the right employees to do it, which is definitely a positive situation for us.
I don't doubt that at all. I think the employees we're talking about are exceptional.
Right.
I'm just sitting here, I don't look at an average increase of $5,000 in salary annually as being sufficient to compensate for the additional roles and responsibilities of being asked to, their intention of being asked to take. So,
Okay.
I look forward to looking to that.
Very good. Any other questions at this time? Any questions from anybody else? Yeah, that's right.
Just a couple of comments. I think it's an astronaut talk about. First of all, I want to say that this transfer station is probably the best transfer station I've ever seen. The way it's operated, the provisions it has, the accommodations of employees. I'm one of those seniors who uses the transfer station with a senior permit. Has there been any thought about eliminating the senior level permit? Just have all the permits the same price?
No, we haven't looked at that option. You know, again, it's a matter of what people are accustomed to. And I think right now we do have I would say a loyal customer base that is accustomed to having a permit and a certain pricing system.
I would tell you right now, it would be worth it. I'm not afraid of the other.
Oh, you mean to move you to 100?
Yeah.
Oh.
Move me back to the general, whatever it is.
Right.
I don't know how many other people are.
Can you put Ray down for the general? Len, is that okay?
Lisa, just note that.
It comes out of his pocketbook.
That's right. The other question I have is, and I've never been really sure, as long, I've had a permit for years and years and years.
All right.
If you go to the brush pile, you don't need a permit?
No, if you're a Clifton Park resident, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a tremendous service that we've had in place. It does generate a little bit of income, as I mentioned, and yeah, it's a good service for residents.
Okay. Yeah. I have to tell you, it is probably the best run transfer station I've ever seen. Bar none. Here, Europe, wherever. No, really.
And various transfer stations.
Yeah, it's a very, very well-run operation.
Yeah, it is.
I just don't want to see anything happen that's going to degrade it, that's all.
Well, I assure you, with the current group of employees that work there and the leadership team that is poised to accept the additional responsibility, it won't suffer at all. And if we don't, if shame on us if we ever stop trying to push the envelope to accomplish those 4 goals that I mentioned, particularly the first 3. And they're all extremely important. As time goes on, we're coming out of this year. Obviously, everybody's revenues have been affected to some extent due to COVID. We don't know what the economy is going to do year to year, especially here in New York. So shame on us if we ever get to the point where we're not pushing the envelope and taking the opportunity to reduce costs and streamline operations at every opportunity.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that, Mr. Supervisor.
Oh, good.
But not on the values of our employees.
Good. Yes, sir.
You're aware the trash war is going on.
Yes.
Okay. This is one
Yeah.
you put that into consideration for your decision making.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like I said, the trend's been going on for a number of years. It may have accelerated a little bit this year due to that exact situation. But the trends have been quite clear for a number of years.
They just came up with a letter saying 0 for a year.
Right. And then guaranteed $25 for 3 years. So, that lessens the difference between a very heavily subsidized transfer station and getting it picked up at the end of your driveway. Yeah. No doubt about it. All right, if there's no further questions or comments, we'll wrap that up. So I wanted to present those ideas for consideration. We'll go from there. All right, now we'll get down to some more budget talk. I sent all of you a,
If I may, not to jump ahead, but the first resolution sentence, they had a house in the historic register.
oh, yeah.
And I believe the homeowners are here.
Oh, okay.
They've been very patient, and I didn't realize that.
Oh,
presentation,
yeah,
so that's
okay.
wrong. If you don't mind,
All
if you
right.
can skip ahead
Absolutely.
and honor them.
Absolutely.
So you're very patient, but you can free to stay if you want.
All right, let's do that.
A resolution designating the Chauncey and Ruth Broadway house to be placed on the Clifton Park Town Register of Historic Places. Whereas the Historic Preservation Commission has recommended that the Chauncey and Ruth Broadway house, 589 Brooms Road, Clifton Park, be added to the Town Register of Historic Places, and whereas the Broadway house was built in 1837 at 589 Brooms Road, Chauncey Broadway lived there with his wife Ruth Ann Nay Manning and raised 10 children there until 1852, when they sold their farmhouse and 77 acres when Chauncey left, headed west with dreams of striking it rich in the California gold fields, and Ruth remained in Clifton Park. And whereas the Broadway house was acquired by Wardville and Maggie Ostrom by 1883 and remained in the Ostrom family until 1971, whereas the home retains some of its original features, including original windows, doors, chair rail, baseboard moldings, original staircase, doors, hardware, still exist. A large two-story rear wing was probably added by the Ostrom family after 1883 and still has original features typical of the late 19th century that include oak wainscoting, door and window frames, as well as an early 20th century column room divider. And whereas structures placed on this register will be given historic status for purposes of townwide recognition, and as such shall be provided with appropriate marker and inclusion in the town brochure identifying all sites so designated. Now therefore be a result of the town board hereby adds the Chauncey and Ruth Broadway House, 589 Brooms Road, Clifton Park, to the town register of historic places.
All right, I move that we approve the resolution with a second by the board.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Ludwig? Yes. Supervisor Barry?
Yes. Was there any additional information that?
No, John Shearer, our town historian, is going to,
Oh, come on up,
say
John,
a few
please.
words. John is the, as we all know, is the resident expert on everyone's house. John knows more about your house perhaps than you do.
Certainly in this case.
I have no idea who lives in the homes today. I can tell you who lived there 100 years ago. So this is sort of an interesting house that we're looking at tonight. Chauncey Porter Broadway was born in 1807, was born in Chatham, Columbia County, and he and his wife, Ruth Ann, built the house there on Brooms Road in 1837. And with them, they came with 6 kids, and 4 more children were born while they were at the house. The house was sold in 1852. It's 1852. Yeah, 52. Their last child was born in 1851. They sold a farmhouse in 71 acres. And then what happens to Chauncey? He leaves his wife. His wife, Ruth Ann, moves in with their eldest daughter, Eliza Ann, who had married a neighbor, Abraham Flagler. And Chauncey goes out to California to start enriching the gold fields. He's there in Calaveras County right after they sold their house. He stays out in California, and his wife and the kids live with their eldest daughter. By 1860, Chauncey becomes a saloon keeper in Sacramento. He late in life, he moves to Kansas, where he's at Junction City, Kansas, and he dies there in 1890, and he's buried out in Kansas. And his wife dies 3 years later. She outlived him, and she's buried here in Clifton Park, at the Brooms Episcopal Church Cemetery on Bishop Ferry Road, right by the transfer station. Well, by 1883, the house is owned by Orville Ostrom and his wife. Now, Orville, as I say, purchased it in 1983. Orville is the grandson of Paul Ostrom, whose monument we were talking about tonight, the obelisk in the cemetery. That was his grandfather's obelisk. So, things really tie together here. Anyway, it's in their family for 3 generations. Their grandson finally sells the house in 1971. So the front section of the house is pretty original. The old section of the house is pretty original. As Teresa mentioned, it's got a lot of original woodwork. And one of the main features is the hallway. It has the original front door, and you go in, and that whole hallway is just as it was in 1837. The door frames, the stairway, and the doors, a lot of times people couldn't afford finer wood, the mahogany. So they painted and grained the doors to look like mahogany. And it's amazing, that has survived since 1837. Nobody has painted over those doors. That's all this original graining. The back end of the house, the L, probably replaced an earlier L. And that was added by the Ostrom family. And that has a lot of original features from the late 19th century, including wonderful oak wainscoting and a lot of original features like the oak door frames, etc. So it's a real treasure. It has a lot of original features, and we're hoping that the owners preserve it that way. Any questions?
No, it's very good, thank you, John. Very much. We do have a resolution for you. And would you like to say a few words about the home?
I just enjoy living there, and I like old things. So. I got the cedar permit too.
Can I interest you in a general permit? We just made $100 tonight.
I'll pass on that. But I appreciate your input.
Well, thank you. And,
Thank you.
So one of the things we do, we have a plaque to give you suitable for the house, or fixings to the house, and has the commission mentioned to you the tax preservation, the tax easement program?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good. The deadline for that is coming up March 1st, correct? March, so if you're interested by March 1st of next year. Great.
do you have the flag now?
Linda has it.
Oh,
So, if you want to come up for a socially distant picture.
Good, good.
I'll present that to you. John, you want to come up?
Yeah. You better.
See the next step.
God forbid. John is right, we are meeting next week. That's right.
That's right.
Here you go, congratulations, thank you. Evelyn, do you wanna? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Sorry we can't do that. All right. Thank you for mentioning that. All right. Sorry to keep them a little longer than necessary. Just to get back to some budgetary items, following along the same goals mentioned earlier, I provided each of you a new proposed memorandum of understanding with the New York State Police. I've been negotiating in recent weeks. As I say in the memo here, a simple document. It includes the following highlights. Eliminates remuneration for services, shifts focus to other items of interest for the state police. Restates the town's commitment to offering a significant amount of free space now and in the future. Right now, we offer about 5,500 square feet to the state police. We almost doubled that square footage, what was that, Dan, about 10 years ago, I guess we did that. It commits the town to upgrades that involve internal office improvements and additional security measures, and solidifies our very successful partnership with the state police. In addition to you can see in there, just a few page document, the areas that we would be committing to as far as the improvements are concerned. And they are under 2.4. One would be to replace some carpet in various areas. Replace the vinyl floor in some specified areas. The town shall install level 3 tempered glass in the front lobby. There's a place in the front lobby where there's glass. They would like a higher level of glass, level 3. Originally they asked us to replace the locks on the doors with they specified it's a Cabla Simplex 8148 push button lock with deadbolt or equivalent. As Dan went through and was able to secure some information and prices from contractors, it became clear that we cannot put that type of lock on the type of door that we have in place, and 3 doors total. So therefore, we'd have to replace the 3 existing doors and then go ahead with the new push button locks with deadbolt or equivalent. And we also had a discussion about painting the what we call the police barracks. So it was decided that we would provide support in the paint itself, but that the state police would provide most or all of the manpower to get the painting done. And this happened, we did this, about 5 years ago, Dan? Correct. Same situation, we supplied the paint and they painted it. Although we did offer to assist them, there are limitations on town employees. You have to go through a little bit of a process, but we have Don Frazier, who was cleared with a top secret clearance, I think, so he was able to get in there. So those are the basic things that we would be committing to. I have included some pricing in the back of this packet with prices for flooring, the doors, and also 4 new cameras to be installed around the public safety building. So we would add 4 cameras for monitoring and safety. So this is I think, again, very big step in our relationship with the state police, and an opportunity to save a significant amount of money in the process while committing to items of importance for them. Were there any questions on that?
Yes, you have,
Yeah.
in the, adjustments you gave us,
Yeah.
a reduction in law enforcement, $200,000. Is that part of the contract? Or reducing?
That is the contract.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
What is being reduced?
So, was that?
What is being reduced? We just received this at 5:15 this evening. I have not had a
That-
chance to read it.
Yeah, well, that's why I gave you some highlights in the memo. First one is eliminates remuneration for services and shifts focus to other items of interest. There's no mention of contract money within the agreement. So yes, that's the $200,000 that you're identifying.
Are we being asked to do this?
What's that?
Are we being asked to make a decision and take action on this tonight?
No, if you don't want to.
Well,
Take some more time. I think we have an opportunity to save $200,000, so I did, at least, I thought that might at least be of interest, so I did include it in the preliminary budget adjustments.
Mr. Supervisor, in your memo, you state that you have been negotiating this in recent weeks.
Yep.
Is there a reason why we have to rush this through tonight? Again, we received.
I said we don't need to vote on it tonight, however, since we have an opportunity before us to save $200,000 in agreement with the state police.
I don't feel comfortable voting on anything that I haven't read, so I would like to make
It's
a
in
motion that we table
it's
this
in the
until-
preliminary budget adjustment. That's
I
it.
made a motion that we table this to a future meeting.
I took a second that motion, I'm not comfortable with.
It's not on the table for consideration. It's not on the agenda. I said, we don't need to vote on it.
Well, I asked for clarification, and you said that we didn't need to take action on it. So
I did say that,
we
yes.
do not need to take action on this tonight.
That's what I said. However, I included it in the money part of it in the preliminary budget adjustments. If you don't want, you don't have to do that either. No problem. Okay, so getting back to, some budget items, again, for consideration. As far as we have the first cut of the budget that was released, this is the second cut of the budget. So as far as changes that, I'm proposing, based on some of the ideas that were presented tonight, as well as, other savings, as you can see from the contract I negotiated with the state police as we work through that. So under the general fund for additions, salary increases, that would be part of next year. Pass, swallow it. The increases for the 3 employees, Dan Clemens, Kieran Lynch, and Don McEwen. Public safety building equipment, $50,000. That goes back to the items that I just mentioned that we would be committing to as part of this MOU. Transfer station capital lease payment, that's for a new cat loader to replace the old one that we currently have at the facility. During the budget workshops, there was discussion, and I think a lot of interest amongst the board regarding 800 band radios for at least 6 of them for town employees. So that $30,000 is there, $5,000 apiece. And then if we were to increase spending in the highway budget, as I'm suggesting, we would need to cover that with another $100,000 out of the general fund. Where would we save? We'd save with the MOU that I just discussed, as well as the elimination of the transfer station supervisor position, which means overall, from the first cut of the budget to this preliminary budget, spending would decrease $64,516 in the general fund. As far as the highway fund goes, so we did add 50,000 for a capital lease payment. You didn't have did you ever request, Dan, for a new plow truck this year?
We went out
I
and
don't
did
recall
our,
seeing.
no, we didn't.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
Is that something you want to think
I would
about?
love having that discussion.
Okay, so there's 50,000 for that, or something else that you'd like to consider. One request that you had that we talked about at the budget workshops was for slip lining, which is process that we've had very good success with. It's expensive, but we do have obviously a great deal of infrastructure repair to do as time goes on. So that has a line item of $200,000. We have that would be a new line. Because typically that's been charged out of the paving line, right?
Yes.
Okay, so to get us to get that 200,000, we took 100,000 out of paving. So it would be 500,000 for paving, right, Mark?
Yes.
So with chips, it'd be just under $1 million, and certainly we can can look to add to the paving dollars during the year, depending on how our finances are doing. Tax stabilization payment, that would be a revenue coming from the general fund, additional $100,000. We'd also use $50,000 from the highway fund balance, which would total an increase in spending in the highway budget of $150,000. So that would be the proposed increase in the highway budget. I think there's some very important items, investment in infrastructure and equipment there. On the second page, Clifton Park sewer, they have a couple of sewer districts here, a few sewer districts. And the only one of any size as far as I'm sorry, we should go back to Clifton Park Sewer District number 1. So we talked in the budget workshops about sewer department taking on you got a question about the sewer department?
No, I have a question about the previous part of the highway road.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So I just want to know, I'm just having some numbers thrown at me here right now.
Yeah.
What we originally started off with a tentative budget at a -1% decrease. I just wondered if Mark could let me know after these, I didn't catch all the numbers coming out, where that leaves us. Is there a chance I get a copy of that?
I have an extra copy here.
Oh, thanks.
So your spending would increase $150,000, like I said.
Okay.
So Clifton Park Sewer District, number 1, we had some discussion in the budget workshops, which I think, again, had a lot of interest, and that was with the advent of Crescent Waste becoming, going from a private system to a public system, a couple thousand customers. Obviously, the system is not new. It's about 50 years old, right? Or a little more in some places. With that being, a concern, certainly, additional workload, we would restructure the department a bit. Mike has asked for a new laborer at grade 1, or grade 3, I'm sorry, step 1. New laborer, salary and benefits, $70,556. And also within that restructure, I know Mike had talked to us about challenges with on-call assignments, as well as day-to-day activities. And again, looking ahead to providing more opportunity for advancement for Clifton Park employees. I think he made a very strong case for a long-term employee that's done a good job, and that's Mr. Van Busker. So the increase that you would ask for, I think, is warranted in this situation, again, with the restructuring of sorts with a new employee going on. And then there were a couple other requests for increases in the grade or step. I think that's something that requires more discussion, but in this case, I thought it was a more unique situation with everything going on in the sewer district, the sewer department at this point. And the other thing we did on the bottom, Clifton Park Sewer District number 2, which is Crescent Waste, that should have been 175 a unit, not 180. So that was adjusted as well. So those are the proposed budget adjustments for the preliminary budget. I'll take any questions or comments on those. So at this point, we can approve them as a group or individually as far as being part of the preliminary budget. I'll move that we approve the suggestions as listed here. minus the transfer station raises, because I think that is obviously something some of the board members want to research a little further, so I can certainly understand that. So I would say minus that 15,994 that we have included for budget adjustments.
During the budget workshops, there were several other requests that aren't listed here.
Right.
Either listed or denied. I believe there might have been some other equipment.
Yep.
I have my notes in front of me. But I would like to go over my notes with each of the other presentations that I gave you, each individual ask for, before I commit to maybe not adding more additions or maybe subtractions.
Well, you can still add and subtract after this. This is just this part of the process. The budget would be before us for a public hearing.
I'm still not comfortable with the police contract together.
So you don't want the $200,000.
I would like some specifics. Pardon me. Again, this was given to us just prior to the meeting. I just think it's highly inappropriate to ask us to take an action on something that we really have not had a chance to go over. I mean, I'm not quite sure. I don't understand why we have to vote to submit this into the preliminary budget. Is that just in order to get it for the public hearing? I mean, because it wasn't, I don't understand the process. We haven't had to do this before.
Well, this is part of the budget process.
I guess I would add to that, I would benefit from more time as well, a limited amount of time. And I think the question that's been posed to some of us, if we don't want $200,000 in savings, is a loaded question. I think it's designed to be incendiary, and it's designed to be confrontational. That's not the way things have been for nearly 9 years that have been here. I think it shouldn't be that way. I don't think any of us are looking to do that. I think we would all benefit, candidly, from more time to review this, other than showing up here for a meeting and being presented and being asked to vote on it. I don't think there's any harm in taking some time to review it.
No.
In more detail and address it at a later date.
No. Very good. So we'll stick with the other budget we had. I will continue to press for these changes, because I think this is the best route for the town to take, just like the transfer station ideas tonight with buildings and grounds. And we're gonna continue out of the supervisor's office to look for more ways to save money and become more efficient. All right, so we'll go to resolutions. Teresa, if you could start there on number 2.
A resolution proclaiming the week of October 23rd through the 31st, 2020 as Red Ribbon Week in Clifton Park, whereas alcohol and drug abuse in this nation has reached epidemic stages, and whereas it is imperative that visible, unified prevention education efforts by community members be launched to eliminate the demand for drugs. And whereas the National Red Ribbon Campaign offers citizens the opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to drug-free lifestyles, which means no use of illegal drugs, no illegal use of legal drugs. And whereas the National Red Ribbon Campaign will be celebrated in every community in America during Red Ribbon Week, October 3rd, 23rd through the 31st. And whereas business, government, parents, law enforcement, media, medical institutions, religious institutions, schools, senior citizen service organizations, and youth will demonstrate their commitment to healthy, drug-free lifestyles by wearing and displaying red ribbons during the week-long campaign. And whereas the community of Clifton Park further commits its resources to ensure the success of Red Ribbon Campaign. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board does hereby proclaim October 23rd through the 31st as Red Ribbon Week, and encourages its citizens to participate in drug prevention education activities, not only during Red Ribbon Week, but all year long, making a visible statement that we are strongly committed to a drug-free town. A resolution scheduling a public hearing regarding the establishment of Clifton Park Sewer District Number 2, Extension Number 1, whereas by resolution number 120 of 2020, the town board established Clifton Park Sewer District Number 2, encompassing generally the area bounded by Huntwood Drive on the north, Westchester Drive, and Grissom Drive on the south, Bonneau Road and Foxwood Drive to the west, and Interstate 87 to the east, to operate and maintain sewer infrastructure and facilities abandoned by the town by the Crescent Waste Treatment Corporation, and whereas approximately 48 residential homes within the Tremont Estate subdivision are served by sewer infrastructure and improvements without benefit of a sewer district or extension for the maintenance or repair of main and non-privately owned infrastructure, and whereas by resolution number 156 of 2020, the town board retained MJ Engineering to prepare a map plan and report to determine the engineering details necessary for the establishment of an extension of Clifton Park Sewer District Number 2 to encompass the Tremont Estates area of the town. And whereas the map plan and report have been prepared by MJ Engineering dated October 15, 2020 in a manner and detail as determined by the town board regarding the proposed sewer district. And whereas the map plan and reports have been filed in the town clerk's office and are available for public inspection during regular business hours, and whereas the boundaries of the proposed district are generally described as Princess Pine, Bittersweet Lane, and Durham Way, as well as street properties on Crescent Road west of Bonneau Lane, more particularly described within the map plan and report, which is on file in the town clerk's office and available for review or downloading at cliftonpark.org, Department Sewer. And whereas the sewer system improvements proposed to be incorporated within Clifton Park Sewer District Number 2, Extension Number 1, consist of all of the pipes and conduits, pumps, pump houses, and the related infrastructure, parts, and apparatus, together with all interests in right-of-ways and other real property interests associated with the sewer infrastructure within the Tremont Estates subdivision and on and along the streets identified above. And whereas the estimated maximum amount to be expended for the improvements including design, construction, and administrative costs is estimated to be $2,000, consisting of engineering costs associated with the development of the map plan and report will be borne by the homeowners with the new extension. And whereas the proposed method of financing the cost of the improvements consisted of payment of engineering costs associated with district extension formation by the town and repayment by users through operating and maintenance charges, and whereas the annual cost of the proposed extension to the typical property of the sewer district will consist of $175 annual sewer use charge to Clifton Park Sewer District Number 2 and a $255.50 sewer charge payable to the Saratoga County Sewer District Facility published rates for the total estimated annual cost for the typical property of $430.50, and whereas the estimated cost of the hookup fee to the typical property for any new users within the sewer district boundaries is anticipated to be $1,000, and whereas private pumps existing within the boundaries of the new district will continue to be owned and maintained by sewer users within the district. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board will hold a public hearing to hear all persons interested in the establishment of the Clifton Park Sewer District Number 2, Extension Number 1, and the maintenance and operation of the improvements of facilities existing within the boundaries of the extension as described to be held at the Clifton Park Senior Community Center, 6 Clifton Common, on November 2nd, 2020 at 7:05 p.m. and be it further resolved in order that the town clerk is to give notice of such hearing by publishing the attached notice in the official town newspaper and by posting a copy of the attached notice of the town's official signboard not less than 10 nor more than 20 days prior to the hearing. A resolution approving award recommendations from the Community Action Fund, whereas by resolution number 46 of 2019, the town board established the Community Action Fund committee to offer opportunities to nonprofit community programs and organizations that support people of Clifton Park. And whereas by resolution number 92 of 2019, the town board approved the criteria for selecting and granting awards, which may range from a minimum of $250 to a maximum of $1,000, and funding is generated by the donation of bottles and cans received for a deposit. And whereas applications for Community Action Fund grants were received by September 30th, 2020, and on October 13th, 2020, the Community Action Fund committee consisting of Supervisor Barrett and the committee members Alicia Jacobs, Jane Miga, Matt Broughton, and Greg Sesme, met to review all applications and make recommendations to award the funds totaling $15,415. And whereas the awards will be presented at the upcoming November 2nd, 2020 town board meeting to be held at the Clifton Park Senior Community Center, now therefore be resolved that the comptroller is authorized to increase community action revenues in the amount of $15,415 and to issue checks totaling $15,415 per the attached list to be paid from Community Programs Community Action Fund. A resolution authorizing the purchase of field grooming equipment for town-owned ball fields, whereas the Clifton Park Baseball League has asked the town board to acquire field grooming equipment necessary for the efficient preparation of baseball fields for recreational league play. And whereas Great Grassland Equipment and Irrigation Corporation, Towards Connected Road, Latham, as an authorized Toro dealer, has the field groomer and accessories for the attached quote at a cost not to exceed $22,893.79 are purchased under New York State Contract PC 68896. And whereas Town Supervisor Barrett recommends the purchase of the equipment from available state contract for possible future sale to the baseball league. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the town to purchase field grooming equipment, grassland equipment, and irrigation corporation in an amount not to exceed $22,893.79 from Clifton Common Equipment to be paid with a transfer from unassigned fund balance to the Clifton Common Equipment. A resolution scheduling a public hearing to consider the 2021 preliminary budget, whereas the town board wishes to obtain comment regarding the 2021 preliminary budget, whereas salaries of the town's elected officials as proposed are attached. Now therefore be it resolved that the public hearing is hereby scheduled for Thursday, November 5th, 2020 at 7:01 p.m. in the Wood Memorial Room, One Town Hall Plaza, Clifton Park, to consider the 2021 preliminary budget and be a further result of the town clerk publish appropriate notice of same. A resolution authorizing the town supervisor to file commitment documents with Saratoga County for collection of the town's share of the 2021 sales tax revenues. Whereas the town of Clifton Park is required to file commitment papers regarding the collection of sales tax revenue for 2021. Now therefore be it resolved that the Clifton Park Town Board hereby authorizes the collection of sales tax revenue to be paid in cash for 2021 from Saratoga County, and be it further resolved that the town supervisor is hereby authorized to file the appropriate documents of commitment with Saratoga County. A resolution allocating funds to allow for the repair, replacement of bay doors and the salt shed roof at the highway department facilities, whereas Highway Superintendent Dan Gold has solicited quotes for the repair or replacement of the overhead doors for the highway facilities. And whereas Adirondack Overhead Door Company Incorporated, Town South Western Avenue, Queensbury, has submitted the sole responsive quote for the replacement and repairs of the door components in an amount not to exceed $19,829. Now therefore be it resolved, Superintendent Full is authorized to accept a quote from Adirondack Overhead Door Company Incorporated, 10 Southwestern Avenue, Queensbury, New York, for $19,829 to be paid from Highway Garage Equipment. If be it further resolved that the comptroller is authorized to transfer $125,000 from unassigned fund balance to Highway Garage Equipment to include potential replacement of the roof of the salt shed. A resolution declaring a public emergency pursuant to General Municipal Law, Section 103(4) for the repair to a sewer main break along with 146 of authorized transfer from contingency. Whereas on September 17, 2020, the Clifton Park Sewer Department identified a broken force main located approximately 35 feet north of Route 146 and approximately 600 feet to the east of the Wade Road within the Corporate Commerce Sewer District. And whereas repairs entail the acquisition of an appropriate permit from New York State DOT to perform excavation along State Highway 146 and whereas the repairs were completed on September 19, 2020, following issuance of the state permit. And whereas Section 103(4) of the New York State General Municipal Law provides that in cases of an emergency situation arising from circumstances affecting public property or the health and safety of the public, the town board may authorize the purchase of service, materials, and equipment without competitive bids. And whereas Michael O'Brien, Collection Systems Manager, engaged Drilling Technologies Incorporated for the repair work of the sewer main break on an emergency basis pursuant to an invoice of $14,250 dated September 20th, 2020, attached and estimated that septic services and sand invoices totaling an additional $1,800 will be forthcoming. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board determines that the resulting damage to the sewer main break within the corporate commerce sewer district as determined on September 17th, 2020 constitutes an emergency for procurement purposes under section 103.4 of general municipal law, and be it further resolved that the comptroller is authorized to pay the amount of $14,250 to Drilling Technologies Incorporated for corporate commerce emergency repair, and be it further resolved that the comptroller is authorized to transfer $16,050 from corporate commerce sewer fund balance to corporate commerce emergency repair for repairs related to the September 17, 2020 sewer main break. A resolution extending the waiver of permit fees for bars and restaurants to utilize tents and other temporary modifications to allow for outdoor seating during the COVID-19 pandemic, whereas resolution number 116 of 2020 allowed business owners in Clifton Park to streamline process for bars and restaurants to utilize tents and other temporary modifications to allow for outdoor seating during phase 2 reopening of the capital region as the area was emerging from the restrictions on economic activity imposed through Governor Cuomo's executive orders 201.1 and SEC related to the COVID-19 emergency through October 15, 2020, and whereas pursuant to executive order 202.38 and consistent with guidelines issued by the New York State Department of Health on June 4, 2020, restaurants and bars within the county were allowed to open with indoor capacity limited, and whereas the state is still in executive orders containing changing rules and restrictions against operations due to New York State assessments of the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas the town board wishes to encourage businesses within the town to offer assistance by streamlining local procedures to increase capacity through outdoor seating to the maximum extent practicable. Now therefore be it resolved that the Director of Building and Zoning is authorized to issue and extend temporary authorization for tennis court canopies to enable outdoor seating capacity consistent with the New York State Fire and Building Codes through December 31st, 2020, and be it further resolved that the permit fees for tents contained in section 103.16 are hereby waived for existing bar and restaurant establishments through December 31st, 2020.
Okay, any questions on the resolutions? All right, let's do this.
Resolution number 197 of 2020, a resolution proclaiming the week of October 23rd through the 31st, 2020 as Ribbon Week in Clifton Park.
I'll move that we do the resolution with a second by the board. I want to thank the Elks for coming by and always bringing attention to this important initiative each year.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz? And Supervisor Barrett.
Yes.
Resolution number 198 of 2020, a resolution scheduling a public hearing regarding the establishment of Clifton Park Sewer District number 2, extension number 1. So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Whalen. This was an area that we discussed most recently during the assumption of ownership of Crescent Place. 48 homes, Tremont Estates. It's off Crescent Road. And they currently don't have any entity that owns their sewer infrastructure. So we move forward with a map plan and report, and we'll be continuing to work toward a resolution here. Normally we'd have, a community meeting, informational meeting that might lead to a public hearing. I think in this case, under the circumstances and restrictions, limiting the number of meetings, I think is important. We have a lot of flexibility within the process but at least have a public hearing and invite everybody and explain exactly what the issue is. There are some people in the neighborhood that understand that, certainly have distributed the map plan and report, which hopefully is circulated. So, anything you want to add here?
No, we can just provide a level of service that they're not used to getting, including, I was thinking about it earlier, was the utility markouts. The neighborhood's kind of been rushing water out there from the sewer lines, and, you know, from here on out, we'll be able to mark or at least take care of things that are struck, which does happen. You know, it's a good deal for these people. You have that layer of protection.
Right. Okay, very good. Any discussion? Okay, Teresa.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz? Yes. Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 199 of 2020, a resolution approving award recommendations for the Community Action Fund.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Wallowitz, second by Mr. Whalen. This is the second year of the Community Action Fund. Very proud of this program. This year, we had roughly about twice the amount of money as we did last year to award. And I want to thank the committee members that were mentioned: Alicia Jacobs, Janine Micah, Matt Grattan, Greg Sesney. So we have a list here. If this gets approved, Matt, we can start contacting these folks and inviting them to the meeting on the 2nd, if you might. But we have Chase the Cure, Girl Scout Junior Troop 2509, Clifton Park Elks Lodge with their Boy Scout troop, Saratoga Center for the Family. There's a tremendous amount of great programs. I won't go through them all because thankfully there's a whole bunch of them. They received anywhere from $250 to $500 to $750 to $1,000 without using any taxpayer funds, which is, I think, an incredible program. So, very successful end of year number 2 of the program. Any discussion? Okay, please.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard? Yes. Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz? Yes. Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 200 of 2020, a resolution authorizing the purchase of field grooming equipment for town-owned ball fields.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Whalen, second by Mr. Morelli. This was a request that came from the Baseball League. It's an opportunity for us to assist them with some important equipment that they need. I want to thank Tom for working on this. Anything you want to add here, Tom?
No.
Any questions? Let's initiate. Okay, Teresa?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz? Yes. Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 201 of 2020, a resolution scheduling a public hearing to consider the 2021 preliminary budget. So moved.
Moved by Mr. Standard, second by Mr. Whalen. Discussion. Okay, Teresa?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz? Yes. Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 202 of 2020, a resolution authorizing the town supervisor to file commitment documents with Saratoga County for collection of the town's share of the 2021 sales tax revenue. So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Standard, second by Mr. Morelli. Discussion. Okay, Teresa?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Here, yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz? Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 203 of 2020, a resolution allocating funds to allow for the repair, replacement of bay doors in the salt shed roof at highway department facilities. Second.
By Mr. Morelli, second by Ms. Wallowitz. This was discussed recently at a budget workshop. We have overhead doors at the main highway garage that is getting a little long in the tooth, as well as an issue with the salt shed, right?
So yeah, a little over 2 years ago, we reached out to Buildings and Grounds about some door issues. They sent us some really good directions of people we can talk to get us a quote. We got a quote. It was a pretty hefty quote with almost $20,000. So we we thought, let's wait until budget time. So budget time came, and it was a good idea then. It's a good idea now. So I'm very thankful that the town board is looking at our doors now. Unfortunately, some of our doors, due to their age, don't close all the way. So during the winter, we do have anywhere between 3 and 6 inch gaps. Does not do well when we're saving all that energy and on our lights when we're spending it on. So having our bays full of diesel vehicles, they need to be heated, and that's the best way to do it. So sealing up the building will prolong the life of our vehicles, prolong the life of our heating system, and Mark will get so mad when he gets our vehicles.
Oh, he doesn't.
Absolutely. And then the other section too, we've had an issue with our salt shed roof. Overall, the roof is in okay shape. There are just these 2 locations where, I guess you gotta go back to the beginning. The whole salt shed is wooden. A lot of structures are now metal and ours is wood. Problem with that is it's wet, it bows, it bends, and all the weight of the salt has been slowly pushing the walls out over the last 20 years. So we've changed the way we move the salt in the salt shed. We've actually reduced the capacity now of the salt shed from around 2,400 tons to about 1,800 tons, so that we aren't putting the salt up on the walls anymore. After doing that, you can actually hear the walls moving back into place. They creak and crack and are slowly moving back. All right. So that's a good thing that's happening. Unfortunately, right now, the beams in the roof are still off-center and are pulling the roof apart. We have actually brand new skylights in the roof right now, which we've covered with tarps. That worked. But this is going to get that problem fixed. This is not anything that can really happen until springtime. We're actually in the next week going to start moving salt in, sadly, to the salt shed, and any work that has to be done would have to be done when the salt shed is empty, or at least we can empty one bay, and then the crew can work on that one bay. We move the salt back, like a musical chairs situation.
Well, hopefully we won't have to use much salt this year. It'll get lucky.
I hope we have a winter like we did last year. Came in with a scream and left with a whimper.
All right, very good. Well, and those bay doors, they definitely look outrageous, that's for sure. I think this is a good item to move on quickly. Any discussion? All right, Teresa?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Thank you very much, everybody.
We got
Resolution number 204, 2020. A resolution declaring a public emergency pursuant to General Municipal Law, Section 1034, for repair to a sewer main break along Route 146 of authorizing transfer from contingency. So moved.
moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Ms. Smallwood. I remember this situation.
Yeah, we were notified of an odor by some commuters. We've been getting off and on complaints, and we could not figure out what was going on. And then we got a left field complaint from somebody coming from a totally different direction, which allowed us to narrow it down. And in the woods, we found a broken force main along New York State Route 146, which posed a variety of obstacles for us. It was a learning experience. We were fortunate enough to have a company available to us that we've worked with before, but that has a lot of experience of working on state highways and the thruway, things that we're not used to, the traffic, the signage, the cones, everything, and permitting. So we needed to get a permit. So we didn't actually make the repair for a couple of days. We reported it like we do to the DEC. But we made the repair on a Saturday morning, actually. And I'm gonna get it wrong, I always do. The Meadow View Apartments.
Yep.
The senior housing area on Wade 146, they have a pump station that's really the only customer down at the bottom of the line where this break was. And we had to hire a septic truck promoter to come over and basically act as the pump station to avoid any sort of issues, because we had to shut everything down, including their pump station. We didn't want to have any damage to their facility. And the sand building, we haven't got yet from Seasons. We actually shoveled that. We used a town dump truck. Dan was nice enough to loan us a truck for the weekend. And we would just fill sand back and forth, because it was all clay, the pipe was like shale, and rock had sat on the pipe, and that's what cracked it. So all in all, it was a success. It was a little bit more expensive than I think it would normally cost us in a neighborhood or something, but I think a lot of it had to do with the permitting and the highway work. But it's fixed, and hopefully we won't have another problem out there. And it's not a busy district, so it doesn't have the same budget structures as other ones, obviously.
Okay. Any questions for Mike? Okay, Therese.
Councilman Whalen? Councilwoman Steinhardt?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Malloy? Yes. Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 205 of 2020, a resolution extending the waiver of permit fees for bars and restaurants to utilize tents and other temporary modifications to allow for outdoor seating during the COVID-19 pandemic. So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Whalen. As the reopening for New York was getting underway, as soon as we heard that restaurants would be able to open under limited capacity, obviously the weather was still cooperating at that point in the summertime, we quickly moved to implement a process where restaurants could have a streamlined process. You get a permit for a tent for outdoor seating, and thereby increasing their capacity right away. So it was no fees involved, a quick inspection by the building department, no need to proceed with a planning board process or anything of the like. So it was a quick and easy and obviously inexpensive process, at least as far as the town and permitting is concerned. And I think doing that quickly really assisted many restaurants with the ability to quickly expand their seating and brought more people back to work sooner than they might have otherwise, which is another positive result of this initiative. So, hopefully the weather continues to cooperate, although I've been to a few different restaurants in town recently, and there are some that are incorporating heating elements within the tents, and it works great. It works great. So hopefully they can continue to offer that option until it gets real cold. Hope that's good. Any questions? Comments? Okay, Teresa.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Malloy? Yes. Supervisor Barrett?
Yes, other business to come before the board this evening. Okay, we'll go to public privilege. John, do you,
No, sir.
you're the last one, Lynn.
Last one.
The last one.
Motion.
God bless you. Would you like to give us the motion to? I can't allow that, John, as much as I'd like to, but I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Okay, second by Ms. Wallowitz.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Malloy? Yes. Supervisor Barrett?
Yes, thank you.